Good morning. This is Monday morning. I sure am glad to be with you today. Today is November the 10th, and it's a very special day. For one thing, it's a day in which we're alive, and it's Monday. That's always a good day. But I would also say that historically, today is the 250th birthday of the United States Marine Corps. And today we say happy birthday to all of our Marine friends. Yesterday we had Veterans Day at our church and we honored all the veterans that were there. We had a great number of veterans in the service. Some have been in our service before, some were members of our church who are either active duty or uh, out of military now, but veterans. And then we also had some guests who came in, and it was wonderful to have brand new veterans in the service. And in honor of the 250th birthday of the Marine Corps, we had a Marine speak for us yesterday. And Walt Baskey, he was one of our members for several years here at our church, one of our deacons. And he and his family moved to Kentucky a few years ago. And so Walt came back and spoke, did a great job speaking for us on Sunday morning, and just a tremendous blessing. But honoring not only all veterans, but also today, especially the Marines. I look back over our ministry now of some 55 years and a lifetime of almost 75 years. That's hard to believe. But I look back over that and I remember historically in my own experience, many Marines that have stood out in my life. I remember when I was a young boy, we had a Marine that was in our church who served in Vietnam. And he was always kind of a hero of mine. He volunteered 3 times to go into Vietnam, and he survived all 3 tours there in Vietnam. I thought, man, what a hero that guy was. I remember a Marine pilot that was in our church and the stories that he told and his faithfulness and what he did, and a lot of others that we have known that were Marines. When I went to Columbus, Georgia, it was where Fort Benning, the home of the infantry, was housed. And of course, they changed the name of the fort, but to me, it'll always be Fort Benning. And we had so many of the retired or active duty military in our service. And one year on Veterans Day, we had, it was God and Country Day, I believe, July the 4th celebration. And so we were honoring our country and we were going to recognize all the military people that were there. And we used the military where they have the medley of their anthems and all the different songs of the different branches for the Army when those caissons go marching on, all those kind of things that were done. And then we asked the soldiers of that particular branch to stand. And I remember we had some Navy that were there. We had several Air Force that were there. We had a ton of Army because that was an Army town. And when it came, they started playing from the halls of Montezuma. One Marine stood up in that auditorium. I'll never forget it. His name Don Edmondson. Don is still a great, great guy. He had surgery recently on his back, but Brother Don, he stood up. He was the only Marine in that service that day with all of those different branches listed. Brother Don stood up. And I'll never forget, I looked at him and I said, Don, I said, you're the only Marine in here with all of these other branches. And I said, I think that's what they call a balance of power. But I think back of those Marines that we have known, many of them. And in our church here, we've had several Marines that were in our church, and we have Now, one of our men, Jay Oliver, was a Marine. We have another man, John Taylor, that I led to Christ not too long ago, was a Marine. Then yesterday, of course, we had some Marines that were in our service. And of course, our assistant pastor, Lee Johnston, is a Marine. And we honor them today and say happy birthday. There is a camaraderie among those who serve in military, and especially those who serve in the same branch, because they have some things in common. There's always been the little bit of competition between the branches, but the truth is every one of them have their role. And if it was not because of those who were willing to serve, we would not have maintained our freedom. So today we honor the Marines. Happy birthday, Marine. And tomorrow it'll be all of our veterans that we recognize, because tomorrow is Veterans Day. And I hope if you see a Marine today, tell them happy birthday for their Marine Corps. And if you see a veteran today, just say thank you for your service, wherever they were from, whatever they've done for our country. And so we want to say thank you to all of them. We're going to be talking about some eternal things, and today we're going to be talking about our eternal God. Several years ago in our church, when our church was still meeting over in the wedding chapel, we had a young lady in our church. She was only about 6 years old at the time. She may have been 7, but she was still just a little girl. She came to me one time and she said to me, Pastor, she said, would you preach a message on the fact that God is eternal? And I did. In fact, some years ago, I gave her the notes that I had for that message because she had asked for that message to be preached. And I'll never forget it. Little old Amy Thompson was just a little thing. And what a joy it was to watch her grow up. And now she's expecting her first baby, she and her husband. And that's the passage of time, I can tell you. But I'll never forget that. Would you preach a message on the fact that God is eternal? Well, today we're going to be talking about the fact that our God is eternal. You know, a lot of people, when they get older and they're retired, they sit down and do nothing. And I'll tell you, if you just sit down and do nothing, you're going to die. That's it. But then some people want to do something. And I heard about this retired man. He had, after he retired, he thought, you know, what can I do? I want to do something. So he came up with an idea. He could play a little keyboard that he had, portable keyboard. And he thought, you know, I'll just go to nursing homes and maybe assisted living places, and even into hospitals, and I'll tell some of my corny jokes and sing a couple of songs just to kind of entertain the patients. Well, he went into this one retirement center, and he set up his little keyboard, and there in the place where people kind of gathered, and he told some jokes and some songs, and the patients' bedsides even, sang in their rooms and things like that. Well, he went into this one room of this man, and he sang a couple of songs and told a couple of his corny jokes. And when he got through, he said to the man laying there, he said, listen, he said, man, I hope you get better. And the guy he was singing to looked at him and said, I hope you get better too. I don't know that was a compliment for the singer. Our text today is found in Deuteronomy chapter 33. I'm speaking on Deuteronomy on Wednesday nights and going through it, but Deuteronomy is a great book. It is some said, the instruction manual for the nation of Israel going into the promised land. And in Deuteronomy 33, as Moses is coming to the end of the book and giving them instruction, he says this: there is none like unto the God of Jeshurun, who rideth upon the heaven in thy help, and in his excellency on the sky. Now, Jeshurun is a reference to Jerusalem. The eternal God is thy refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. And he shall thrust out the enemy from before thee, and shall say, destroy them. Now, follow the context. They're getting ready to go into the promised land, into Canaan land. They're going to have to fight their way through. And what did he say? He shall thrust out the enemy before thee. Israel then shall dwell in safety alone. The fountain of Jacob shall be upon a land of corn and wine. Also his heavens shall drop down dew. Happy art thou, O Israel. Who is like unto thee, O people saved by the Lord, the shield of thy help? And who is the sword of thy excellency? And thine enemies shall be found liars unto thee, and thou shalt tread upon their high places. Now look back at verse 27. The eternal God is thy refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. Now watch that carefully, because if God is not eternal, he doesn't have everlasting arms. The word eternal is one that we have difficulty fathoming in our minds and our understanding, because we live in the constraints of time. Everything about us is time related. It's all related to years. We celebrate birthdays by years. Our watches are giving us seconds and minutes and hours and days, even. All of those things. We're related to time. And if there is no time, then there is no age. And so all of our life is built around that. But God is not limited to the constraints of time. He doesn't deal in time like we do. We have great difficulty understanding that our God had no beginning and has no ending. That is very hard for the natural mind to even comprehend. The Bible tells us the same of Jesus, always the same, forever. It's a statement of what we understand to be the character, the nature of our God. The greatness of our God is not only in the power that he possesses, nor the wisdom, the understanding, or any of the other attributes that are identified with greatness, but the true greatness of God is found in his eternality. If God is not eternal, then his power is only for a limited time. His wisdom is short-lived, and knowledge is only for the present. But our God is not limited, for he is the eternal God. His attributes are eternal. His promises are eternal. In one place, we are told that because God could not swear by any greater, he swore by himself that he would do what he said he would do. How true that is. There is none greater in power, promises, understanding, or wisdom, but all of this is secure in the fact that God is eternal. Sometimes we wrestle with that term, eternal. What does it mean? It literally means without beginning or end, lasting forever, or always existing. As I mentioned earlier, that's what is meant in Hebrews 13:8, when we are told that it is Jesus Christ, the same yesterday, today, and forever. In other words, the past, the present, the future. He's the same. A songwriter wrote the little song, Always the Same. He's always the same, always. Why is the fact that God is eternal important? Because it speaks of his duration before all things and his continuation, that it will always be true. When God makes eternal promises, only an eternal God can keep them. I cannot say to those I love, my wife, my children, my family, my grandchildren, I can't make them a promise to say, I will never leave you no matter what. I can't say that, because there's coming a day when I will leave them. I remember the day when family members of the past have passed away and, as they say, gone on. And when they do, they're not with us anymore. They're not here. But God promised eternally, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. Only an eternal God can have a word that is forever and forever settled, as the Bible says about his word. The gods of the world have been lost to the passage of time. In every civilization of the past, they had gods that they made up. The golden calf that Aaron made is long gone. It's nowhere to be found. The gods of the world, that where they cut them on totem poles and made those wooden gods that had eyes that could not see, ears that couldn't hear, mouths that couldn't speak, hands that could not touch. They're all gone. But the eternal God is still here. A preacher used an illustration one time of a wealthy person, and he used somebody like the Vanderbilts or Rockefellers that you might be thinking of, or in a more present time, somebody like Elon Musk or Mark Cuban, billionaires of our day. And he said, can you imagine one of those people leaving their billfolded home that has all their ATM cards? They didn't bring their cell phone that has the information on it. And they got off and they realized, good night, I didn't bring any money. This is awful. I didn't bring any money. What am I going to do? Well, they understand this. It's not a permanent problem. It's going to be rectified, because when they get home, the unlimited resources are there for them. Well, I want you to know, many times in our life, we feel like that spiritually. Maybe somehow something has happened to us. We're facing a situation. And if we're not careful, we allow the situation of the moment to dictate our view of what God is going to do for us. But when we realize that the God of all grace, the God of all power, the God of all understanding, the eternal God is our God, and he will never end, he is eternal, then we realize that his grace is eternal. His strength is eternal. His power is eternal. And I can rest on the promises of my eternal God. Somebody said this, and it is so true, and I want to say it here to close. Every promise of God is based on his eternality and his eternal character. You can say, I am resting my eternity on his eternality. What a promise we have, and what a God. God bless you for listening today. Hope you'll join with us in the morning, right here at 8:30. God bless you today is my prayer.